We're at Network X 2025 in Paris, and we're delighted to have a guest with us, Chem Assayag.
Good morning.
Good morning. And he is working for Orange, and he'll explain a bit more what he does for the company. But it's really, as I say, a pleasure to have you on board. On Digital Talk, we spotlight entrepreneurs, leaders, and innovators using digital tech and telecoms to drive global impact in a changing world. Uncovering the unexpected, spotlighting hidden gems, and sharing inspiring stories that shine a light on the most transformative corners of our industry. Over to you. Do you want to just say a few more words about yourself and your role in Orange?
Sure. So as you said, I'm working for Orange. I'm part of an organization called Orange Innovation, which is driving technology and innovation for the group. And more specifically, I'm in charge of what we call the home services innovation domain. So I'm basically driving technology and innovation in the home services area, which means devices in the home like gateways, set-top boxes, connectivity, smart home, and also TV and entertainment. And with the teams, we are designing, developing, and deploying different technologies, products, and solutions with our different BUs all across our geographies like Europe, but also Africa.
Okay, so business units, I guess, that we love in our telecom industry, abbreviations, those are business units. So it's across the whole domain. So I guess the actual, let's say, demands of the BUs can be quite different.
Yeah, sure. Obviously, the level of connectivity, for instance, like the penetration of fiber is different from the different countries. So in Europe now, it's pretty high. In Africa, it's still kind of a new market. So you have obviously to adapt to the specifics of each of the markets. But at the end of the day, they are driving, obviously, their business and they know their customers. And we are trying to offer the best solutions and products. And if we can have a common approach, obviously, that's, I think, to the benefit of the different BUs and to the group.
And how does that work, the working together? I mean, do they come with demands to you or do you come suggestions to them? How's the collaboration?
It works both ways. Sometimes they come to me and say, oh, we have identified this technology, we have this idea, can you help us? Or sometimes we say, okay, we have identified something and the teams have started doing a POC or something relevant. And then we work with them to get to the product phase and potentially to a launch phase. As we do innovation, sometimes it works and sometimes it fails. And the goal is obviously to have as many successes as possible and really see real commercial deployments and hopefully see the success of these deployments.
Today's episode is sponsored by IFG Consulting Europe, who help operators to tap into technologies to accelerate digitization of the network, drive revenues, and reduce costs by championing promising software providers in telecoms, enterprise, and mobile markets. Go to ifgconsultingeurope.com to find out more.
And you mentioned your innovation. Innovation is one of these topics which means a lot to various people. What does that mean within the Orange Group and how do you foster that?
So as you said, innovation can really mean different things. One, you can innovate by just being more efficient, doing things that you already do, but do them, in a much better way. You need less time or you need less resources, and you do that by bringing innovation. So it can be about processes, methodologies, really the way of working. It can be really about bringing new things to the market. So it can be new technologies, new aggregation of different components and putting them together. You create something new and bring that to the market. So you have different ways to innovate. Obviously, in our industry, people usually associate innovation and technology like new things. So moving, for instance, from 4G to 5G, moving from Wi-Fi 6 to Wi-Fi 7, and tomorrow Wi-Fi 8. AI, for instance, obviously is something that we speak a lot about these days that can be seen as really innovation. And then the key actually, because you can have a wonderful technology, is really making sure that the technology is really matching a customer demand and finds, its audience in some way or form, because you can have very nice improvements on the technology side, but they are not really matching the customer's expectation, or the way they are marketed is not really relevant for them. So success is about innovation, which is really meeting the customer.
I like that. And I think you just made me think, I'm afraid, well, I like to think when I'm listening to what's being said. And I was thinking, actually, you're translating what's a complex thing. Telecommunication is quite complex. But make it simple and usable for the user. That's a key part of what you're doing. And those users have different IT skills, if at all. So you have to be able to deal with all sorts of things. Do you want to draw a little landscape a little bit in, where you see innovation right now in some of the work you guys are doing?
Yeah, actually, back to what you just said, if I kind of look at the orange, what we call raison d'être, which is mission or purpose, I'm just going to quote it. Our purpose is, as a trusted partner, Orange gives everyone the keys to a responsible digital world. And obviously, there are very important words there. Obviously, trust. It's about trust. It's about being responsible, and it's about giving everyone, which means we have to be inclusive. And obviously, when you do innovation, people can be a little bit sometimes frightened or scared by the pace of innovation. So we want to make sure that we give the key, so we help people really take advantage of this innovation. And that's one of the components of the way we innovate, making sure that this is relevant not only commercially, but also we give really the means to the people to take advantage, as I said, of this innovation. So this is something which is also driving the way we work.
Yes, I like that. That's a very, very positive statement. But coming back to the particular, if you're talking about things, I mean, coming back to our podcast as well, I mean, we're really interested in creating a better world, right? So there must be initiatives within what you're doing, which also fit in within your raison d'être, but also applicable to some of the stuff that we're trying to share with the world. So can you show us more on that?
I think these days we have a program which is called For Good Connections. And we are really trying to do a number of things around youth protection. And I'm going to give some examples of these initiatives. Because we see this is something which is really important to our customers. How do you deal somehow with all these technologies, and especially smartphones, and make sure that the way they are being used by younger generation is the proper way. And we know that there are risks about the kind of addiction, cyberbullying, etc. So we have different initiatives. One, starting with the basics, is just giving a lot of tips, explanations to the parents or to the teenagers about the way to really use properly their different digital devices, and especially the smartphone. And then moving to some initiatives which are kind of a little bit more sophisticated, quote to quote. For instance, within video games, some video games, we have partnerships where we create what we call safe zones. So if a gamer, typically a teenager, feels that there is a risk, like he might be harassed or something, he gets to, in the gameplay, there is a kind of safe zone that he can go to, and then activate a kind of red button to say, I need some help, there is something wrong going on. That's one example. Another example is an offering that we started marketing in the French market like 6 months ago, which is called the Safer Phone. So it's a special a mobile plan, which comes with specific phones, number of gigs, data plan, which is, I think, 5 gigs, so not too much, but still relevant. It comes also with specific parental control. And we have also a partnership with a company which is about potentially identifying through messages, etc., risks of cyberbullying. So parents are notified without knowing about the content, but just they are being notified that there is something also that they should look at. And also a kind of contract, quote to quote, between the parents and the kids, that they will give some advice, like they sign a mutual kind of agreement about the way to use the phone on both sides. So we see the full package again to help the parents manage the way their teenagers and potentially kids are going to use the smartphone. And sometimes we know that this is really being seen as a very complicated moment, like, you are going to have your kid or your teenager now having a smartphone, how to deal with it. So this is really about this safer phone offering.
It's one of the few controls parents I think have about their children is how, to what extent, at least theoretically, I presume there is functionality in there where you can say so many hours they're allowed to internet service. But that's a strong stick, right? If from a parent perspective.
And the fact that there is a kind of mutual commitment, like, okay, I agree, I'm giving you the phone, so I'm making a step, but on your side, you need to make a step, which is making also a few commitments about the time you will spend, or if there is something that you have questions about, you should come to me and we should discuss it. So it's a way also to open a dialogue, because it's not like right or wrong, it's really about, finding the proper space for discussing these topics.
The youth, of course, will cover all your BUs and all your geography.
Yeah.
So is that something you're rolling out?
So we started with France. So typically, and this is back to kind of the corporate role that I am. If we have, in this case, this is really something that the French teams have been looking at. If there is an initiative which makes sense elsewhere, we try to see how we can replicate. So typically, I'm sure that the other BUs will look at it and potentially decide to go for it too.
The other end of the market is the aged people. Do you do anything in that area? Because it's a personal area that we have confronted.
That's an area we're looking at. We don't have a specific offer right now, but this is very, very much tied to technology. There are new technologies typically around what we call Wi-Fi sensing, which is a way basically to detect the presence of someone using the Wi-Fi waves. So you don't need a new equipment, you just use your gateway, your router.
It's non-intrusive, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you can detect whether or not there is someone in a room. Knowing that, and if you combine that with AI, you can identify patterns like, let's say your parent is living alone, and you know that every day he or she is waking up at 8. Yeah. Usually he or she goes to the bathroom, takes a shower, then goes to the kitchen and drinks a tea, whatever. But if you using this Wi-Fi sensing technology, you figure out that actually it's 10 and no one came to the kitchen.
Yeah.
You might think, there is something wrong, and you don't detect any presence, anyone kind of moving into the space. So potentially that means that the person is still in her bed. In this case, you might think, this is not unusual. I'm going to trigger a call. Yeah. That's maybe step one. I'm going to trigger a call. If someone is responding, then okay, fine. It was a kind of non-issue. But if someone is not, no one is responding, then you get into something different, which is, okay, I need to go or I need to send someone to check. So in this case, using technology, you can typically make sure that nothing wrong or bad is happening. And we have a number of thoughts around these kind of use cases, then discussing them.
So if someone, for example, we've had on our podcast someone that was involved heavily with dementia from Australia. So that's a particular type of customer, let's say. If they wanted to take because we've got a prototype at the moment, is that something you'd be interested in talking to them about? Can people approach you? I'm trying to get to the point of how do these edge cases, let's call it, because you have the normal average person, but then we also have these on the side things.
So typically we have companies, partners coming to us and discussing the technology, but also potentially use cases. As I said today, we don't have a specific offering, but we are discussing, and I know that some other operators also are looking at it. So we'll see, how far we go, and obviously it's raising also important questions, because then you deal with really health and safety. So we do have using some kind of other technology. We do have already services in the home protection space, like making sure there is no intrusion, but which is more kind of the usual home surveillance market. So you can see that as a kind of adjacent market, but then it's not about protecting goods, but about protecting people.
Another area that we cover in our podcast is the circular economy. And I think you mentioned yourself that, and I know the EU is pushing for recycling and other things, and no doubt Orange is a leader in that space. So I'm thinking here of, making sure the supply chain is compliant and also reusability and recycling. Can you share us a bit more as to how that fits in with your job?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as I said, my job is covering the devices in the home space, like the gateway, the extenders, and the set-top boxes, which do account for a real portion of our Scope 3 emissions. So we, as a company, have made a commitment to net carbon neutrality by 2040, which is actually coming soon. And we have already achieved significant milestones. For instance, if you look at Scope 1 and 2, we have already reduced the emissions by 30% compared to 2015. And for Scope 1, 2, and 3, I think the goal is minus 45% by 2030. So obviously, in order to achieve that, you have to tackle all the different elements of the value chain. As I said, devices in home space, this is a real part of it. So this starts with eco-design. So how do you reduce the footprint of the emissions when it comes to production? So it's about recycled materials, biosourcing, optimizing the software architecture with the chipset manufacturers and the OEMs. So you want really to make sure that at the production stage you really decrease the footprint of the carbon emissions. And then it's about the life cycle assessment of the device, and throughout the life, how can you also optimize that? One key element is obviously about energy consumption, and depending on the devices, this might account for more than 50% of the total carbon emissions across the lifespan of the device. Wow. So typically what we launch is I'm going to be a little bit technical. A gateway typically supports different bands, okay? But you don't need to use all of them all the time. So we automatically detect when a band is not used and does not need to be used, and we switch it off, okay? Technically speaking, that's the FIG 5 gigahertz band. And by doing that, we estimate that we can reduce the consumption by 30%, okay? And people do not notice, they don't see any service issue. This is really kind of completely invisible to them. And we do that using data and technology. That's one other example. And then at the kind of the end of the chain, this is about recycling, repairing. So we have a dedicated program inside Orange called RE, R-E, for repair, recycle, refurbish. And the interesting thing is that you have to really look at it from the design standpoint. So you have to do kind of repairability or refurbishing by design, which goes by to the initial phase that I mentioned in terms of materials and optimization of the architecture. Because if you want your device to be refurbishable, you need to make sure that the components at the beginning are at a level of quality which allows for extending the lifespan of the device. If you want to download new software, you need to make sure that you have the right memory. So it's really the full cycle that you have to take account. And if I think, for instance, about the French market, we have levels of refurbishing which are very, very high. I don't have the last number in mind, but we are far above like the 80% mark. So basically, that's also very interesting from an economical standpoint, because by extending the life of your device, obviously you don't need to buy new devices, so this is also decreasing your costs. So in this case, we are making sure that sustainability and savings are going together, which makes a lot of people happy in the company.
Do you think coming to a technical point that you raised, do you see upgradability should be software rather than hardware? I'm thinking of in the life cycle of mobile. There is still the discussion on 6G, whether it's a software upgrade or a hardware upgrade, because, of course, if you have to do a hardware upgrade, by definition, there's the whole recycling. But I guess on the set-top box or the gateways, do you also position there from an operator perspective the same sort of way of...
So what we try to do when this is feasible, if we know that, for instance, a new technology is coming, we design the devices in such a way that they can be upgraded. Sometimes it's a software upgrade, so that's kind of the easy, quote to quote, or sometimes you just need to add a new component on a board, etc. So you don't need to replace the full device. You just take the device and maybe replace the component, and by doing that, you upgrade the device. So obviously, this is also very, very efficient. So when we can do it, we try again to integrate that from the design phase.
Do you also deal with, I'm going to bring two topics in together if you don't mind. AI is something you briefly mentioned, but also I'm going to call the topic smart homes, which I know is a generic term. But I'm imagining that you have the capability, maybe there's also apps where, coming back to your raison d'etre, about also giving the keys, trust, also visibility. So for as a consumer to know which energy is being used in my home or various, put them in control. Is that part of your mission, and how are you tackling that?
So we do have obviously especially apps which are giving the right level of visibility about which devices are connected, how, etc., and you can manage that. We have also a very strong policy around data protection, so privacy, obviously in Europe, GDPR, etc. But we really pay a lot of attention around consent, typically for customer journeys when we collect data, etc. And we have demonstrated recently, going back to your energy management app or feature, we have demonstrated with one supplier of energy the fact that using a kind of small agent in our gateway, and this was demonstrated in the context of a new technology called Purple, that you can typically give visibility about the energy consumption. And then the next step potentially is to optimize that, which means that you decrease the bill for the customer. And this is a strong value proposition. And even going beyond that, because the electricity network is a grid, you can play with the level of supply, and in this case, this is also interesting to the electricity suppliers.
And is there? You mentioned Purple as one company that's supporting that.
It's a technology.
It's a technology.
Yeah.
Okay, so that means it can work on several platforms.
Yeah.
So it's a standard which
exactly. Purple is a telco-driven open source standard for gateways. And the goal is to make it as wide as possible, so as many gateways will embark it, making it relevant for a lot of players to use it. And because you mentioned AI, obviously a lot of these things can happen now because we use AI technologies. People now, when you talk about AI, they always think generative AI, but it's not only about generative AI. It's also about AI being used to understand patterns, and based on that create frameworks for initiatives, actions, etc. May they be visible or invisible to the users. If they are invisible, this goes back to privacy and consent, because obviously if you want to do that, you need to make sure to let people know about it, and you need to make sure that they are comfortable with it.
Fantastic. And are there any particular initiatives AI-wise that you want to mention, and how it's being used?
I think it's interesting because again, it drives, we believe, satisfaction, and also it has a good impact for us as a company from an economical standpoint. You can use AI to prevent problems surfacing to the customers. What I mean is that you detect that there is a problem, like connectivity problem or something, and using AI, you will be able to correct that, and people will not notice that there was a problem. So, because obviously if there is a problem, then most likely, one, they will not be happy, and they will call you, which costs money, time, etc. If the problem can be solved preventively, then obviously this is to the benefit of the customer, because there is no problem anymore, and to you, because you don't have to deal with the problem. Or sometimes using AI and then potentially generative AI tools and natural voice interaction. If there is a problem, people can ask in a very natural way, like, okay, my image is freezing. Why? Or the connection is not working. What can I do? And then you can get the response, oh, the image is freezing, but it's just going to be for a few seconds, and otherwise everything is fine. Or connectivity, actually your plug is not well connected, just replug.
So how do they do that?
You just ask the device. So in the device,
there's a voice prompt.
Yeah, so we've demonstrated, for instance, on the TV side, on set-top boxes, using AI engines from the market, that we can improve the customer journey and the discovery of content. You would ask typically, okay, I want to watch a movie with superheroes happening in the 50s, and we'll come back to you and say, we have that and that. Do you like it? Oh, yes. Oh,
so it's through that sort of content interaction. Fantastic. So we are at Networks X, and you were here a few days ago, or at least here the first day. And what's your impression of the show? It's obviously nice to have it in your hometown. Or let's say your home country, at least. As you say, you live slightly outside of Paris, you said to yourself. But I believe next year it's going to Vienna, by the way. So what do you think of the event?
Yeah, it's actually it's interesting because this is the third year in Paris. And you can already see like the expansion and the growth of the event, even visually, because like the space has been really kind of expanding. So that's nice to see momentum around our industry and more things. So that's one really interesting element. And as far as we are concerned, it was also coupled with an event called the Purple Summit, which has been also very successful. So being able to bring the two together was...
Plug it on.
Yeah, that was great. So very nice momentum. A lot of AI, for sure. I mean, everyone is showing different use cases. Some of them are around care, what I was mentioning, and some of them are more about the customer journey and new types of application, and typically, around Wi-Fi sensing, these kind of technologies. These are really the two areas where we see demonstrations and potential business coming.
Any surprises or anything you want to share with the audience around a nugget, as we say in English, like something special, which this is what this...
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people were showing things. I didn't have was something that was really kind of really new, and it's more like seeing the diversity of use cases, etc., but using the same kind of principles, and then it's about the way the customer journey is really being implemented.
Well, thank you very much, sir. And so one of the things we like to ask is, that's your day job, Orange, but in your private life, what other topics in the world should we be looking at, do you think, of importance?
I think AI at large and the impact of AI is really something that is going to be really a big thing, because it touches so many different aspects of our life, like how do we work tomorrow? How do we behave tomorrow? Actually, I wrote a small paper about it a few months ago. If you have an AI agent which knows everything about you, that can interact with other agents, like your partner agent, your kids agent, etc. At the end of the day, how much level of control do you still have over that? Because if the agent knows everything about you, maybe he's going just to meet the agent of your partner, and they will decide together where you go for vacation, because then your agent knows that you like, going to big towns in Europe, and you like this kind of restaurants, and your partner agent agrees, and they come back to you and say, we have identified you should go to Vienna and spend 5 days, and we have picked the following hotels, and we have made this booking in this restaurant because we know you like Indian food.
I actually quite like it. I think you think it's a threat. I think it's a simplification of life.
It's a simplification of life. The question is, how far do you go, and how much control do you still retain, and what's the room for surprise?
Right. Well, to our guests, we'll put that as a footnote in the podcast and link to it, if that's okay. I think that'd be a good one as well.
It's in French.
It's in French.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure we can come with the AI translation.
Exactly.
Or something of the similar as well. And as I said to you, we were at the AI for Good Summit run by the ITU, which is also a very useful summit for you maybe next year to go to as well. It was held in Geneva, and they made this particular point about, Generation Alpha now will be born in the world of AI, as you mentioned, and fundamentally, what advice would you give to any young budding entrepreneur who wants to do good with AI? Have you got any suggestions? Wise words, as we call it.
Yeah, I think privacy and transparency are really two key things. We need to make sure that people know what this is about, and sometimes these topics are very complicated. So you need to educate people and you need to make sure that they understand what's happening, and then they will make the choices they want to make. But at the very least, you need to make sure that they understand what this is about. And again, some people might feel very comfortable, and some people might say, I agree to that, but I don't agree to that. So making sure that people understand what is at stake and giving them the right level of control, I think that's very important. And I think a lot of people are becoming very concerned about that. So because in this area, technology is a real opportunity, we have to make sure that they don't just see that as a threat. But again, in order to that, you have to provide the right level of information and transparency.
Yes, I think I see what you mean. So underlying, that's fantastic. Well, we also like to give our guests the opportunity, as we do good as a podcast, give a shout out to someone or an organization or a project which you think is worth sharing. Have you got something in mind?
So I mentioned the Purple Summit. So for us, this is really a very interesting initiative. We have to embark also everything that relates to AI for good or for good connections, everything that we mentioned about energy efficiency, eco-design. So we need to make sure also this is embarked into the journey, and we are working with other operators and all the ecosystem about that. And in that respect, a lot of people have been working. I have one colleague who has been very instrumental in driving all that, who is retiring these days. So I'd just like to mention, his name is Wojtek Majkowski, and he really deserves a lot of congratulations for the work he has been doing in this purple ecosystem.
Well, thank you very much. That's very good. Well, you're now part of the Digital Tel Talk family. And thank you very much for being part of the podcast, and look forward to other stories. And it's been a great pleasure to meet you.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you.
Thank you, Chem. We are honoured to be media partners with Network X at this year's flagship event from Informa Connect, to do with all things telecommunication, which was held in Paris this October. Big news is that next year this event is moving to Vienna, so mark your diaries for the 13th to 15th of October 2026. To be one of the first to access our interesting interviews from this event with Orange and the Telecommunications Industry Association, amongst others, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join the community by following us on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening and stay tuned.